Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our Social Reading Spaces Running Informal Book Groups webinar. We're really pleased that you are joining us. My name is Victoria Dilley and I am Chief Executive at the School Library Association. I will be your chair today. We are joined by a fantastic lineup of guests. We are very excited about the Social Reading Spaces project and the model that we piloted in collaboration with HarperCollins and the amazing Farshore team. I also want to say a massive thank you to my team for all the work that's gone into bringing everything that we're going to be sharing with you today, especially Sarah Aspinall. She's done a great job on all the resources. So as you will possibly have heard, or maybe you've read the report, the positive impact these social reading spaces book groups have had on young people is quite simply amazing. And we are really pleased that we have been able to pull together the learnings and we'll be launching a toolkit today, which we've produced in collaboration with the team at HarperCollins and Farshore, and also some really amazing supporting resources so that you can run these book groups in your school. I'm also really pleased to say that I'm having some very exciting conversations about potential funding and scale up so that we can actually deliver even more social reading spaces book groups in school libraries across the UK. Ultimately, this project demonstrates the huge value when you invest time in reading and resources for the school library, and also use the amazing expertise of school librarians to support children and young people's reading. And that's what we at the SLA are working towards, projects and programs that drive impact so that children and young people can reach their full potential. So we have an amazing lineup of speakers, and we'd love you to use the chat to ask questions after all the speakers have presented or shared their thoughts. We will have time, hopefully, for Q&A at the end. So please do use the chat to share questions, and we will do our best to answer as many of those as possible. But first up, we're going to hear from Alison David, Consumer Insights Director at Farshore, an imprint of HarperCollins, who is going to be talking about the research underpinning the project and some of the context around it. So over to you, Alison.
Hi, everyone. So I've just got 5 minutes, so I'm going to be pretty quick and share an overview of the research project for you, the background and the key findings. But there, as Victoria said, there is a full research paper if you'd like to know more. So next slide, please. So I thought I'd sort of set the scene here. We all know that children's reading's in crisis. We hear it, we see it every day, actually. And since 2012, there's been a really steep decline across all age groups in children choosing to read. You can see the chart here showing that. So HarperCollins and the SLA, we wanted to focus on the disengaged older children in the green columns here. And so we devised our social reading spaces trial. So what's the problem? Well, just thought I'd summarise it. It's basically that children think of reading as a school subject that they're tested on. They think, well, it's something I can get wrong. It's instructional. They'd have to read for class reads. They're even sometimes told when to read. So they just don't think it's for them. It's boring and it's not fun. On the other hand, screens are fun and they fill a lot of free time. And of course, few children are being read to, so they don't have a reading for pleasure foundation. I mean, lots of children in the early secondary school years, it's been a long time since they were read to. Could you click on? Thank you. So the solutions, well, we do know the solutions. We know that when they're read to often, they're much, much more likely to choose to read. And that's because being read to is a joy. It's so much fun. It makes children relax and they become motivated to read themselves. Other solutions, as we know, are having wide choice, which is obviously, the importance of librarians and libraries, and free choice of reading materials. So for older children, we wanted to engage. We considered how we could create that important feeling of relaxation and an atmosphere of fun. And we thought about, first of all, what it's like to be an adolescent. Next slide, please. So I remember it. It's a long time ago, but I actually remember it. It's not much fun. Psychological reactance is a very prevalent feeling, and that means sort of resisting when you feel like you're being pushed into something, when you don't have any choice. So you kind of want to kick back when you feel that. Friendships and peer relationships are so important to adolescents, and there's a really strong need to feel accepted and to belong. And there's obviously also increased emotional sensitivity and vulnerability. But on the other hand, positive peer relationships really do promote well-being. So these 3 points really helped us shape our idea. And we basically thought, instead of making the start point of this, the reading, the start point was the wants and needs of children and of adolescents. If you could click on. So we thought, this is what we thought really, if we can give them what they want and need through reading, can we change their ideas about reading? Next slide. So we created this pressure-free, social, relaxing place to have fun, discover books, and feel the all-important sense of autonomy. So to underline that autonomy, there was no requirement to read. It happened during the timetabled day, so no free time was given up by students, which was a win. The physical environment that we were sort of asked to create showed it was different. So it was a cozy space. So some librarians, some schools used fairy lights, some used blankets, bean bags, cushions, most used biscuits, snacks, all to kind of signal it's different. We also supplied a selection of letters from our authors and books to be unboxed each time at each club to create a sense of exclusivity. And we trialled these clubs in 17 schools with Year 8 children, so that's 12 to 13-year-olds, from October 24 to February 25, so straddling 2 half terms, so 10 to 12 weeks, depending on the school. Next slide, please. So what actually happened in book club? Well, first of all, students had the right to choose whether to read and what to read. There was no homework, no tasks, no incentives, no rewards. And the format, so many librarians invited students to talk about their week, and this built trust and helped everyone to get to know each other, and of course enabled the matching of books to interests. Librarians read extracts, some played ambient music, some asked students which books they might read based on the cover. Some shared video or audio content linked to books. One tried asking students to choose a book for someone else in the group and say why. So there were all sorts of really lovely creative ideas. And the librarians also read out author letters at their discretion, judging which one would be most likely to appeal to the children in each group and to prompt discussion. So next click, please. This is a very short extract from a rather long letter from Derek Landy. It's completely bonkers, as you might expect, and it proved to be kind of especially enjoyed by the boys. And the next one is Anna James. So she included a copy of the Rights of the Reader poster. And that was really appreciated by many students, because actually it turned out for some it was a total revelation that you could give up on a book if you didn't like it. But the outcome of all of this was that the students relaxed, and as we'd hoped, as book club progressed, we found they began to read and talk about the books that they were reading. And next slide. So across all of the schools, librarians recounted stories of breakthroughs, describing how students who'd never previously read for enjoyment or even finished a book found a book that they loved. At the end of the trial, 60% of these disengaged students said the trial had made them more interested in books and reading, just in a matter of weeks. By giving students choice and agency, that they dropped their negative attitudes. So if you see this comment in the top left, it was just good to be in a small group and not be told we have to do something, but be given a choice. And at the bottom, a comment about how nice it was not to be judged by the librarian when they didn't like something. And top right, a boy who said he now tries to read at least 10 minutes every day, when before book club he never read. So at the end of the trial, 52% of the students said they were reading more, again, after just a few weeks. So we found that students bonded through conversations, book talk, biscuits. They made new friends. They became more confident to share their views. And book club felt like a safe space for being heard. So there's some lovely comments here. I'll just pick out two. Bottom left, you can see a boy said it's a place you can be yourself. And top right, a girl said she liked being able to talk without getting things wrong. Almost all the students said that book club prompted positive feelings. So we heard relaxed, comfortable, cozy, happy, interested. The top left comment, this girl said that she liked the snacks, she liked the small groups in the library, that it felt calm, and that she discovered what books she liked. And below left, a boy said he liked the cushions and the coziness. And in fact, the space and how it was dressed and how it felt proved to be a very important part of this trial. So at the end, 82% said that they want a book club to continue. So here are some more lovely comments from the students. And I think the happiness that came from taking part really shines through. So we've got, I would absolutely love to have it again and again until I leave the school. And I love it so much and I don't want it to end. It's amazing. So I think this trial's been a really wonderful reminder of how librarians impact and contribute to so much more than reading, you know, to children's happiness, confidence, resilience, belonging, well-being, so much. So at the end of this trial, 16 of the 17 librarians said they'd recommend running a social book club. And one shared this comment. She said, there was an occasion when someone said, I hate all books. And another student said, have you listened to Miss? You just haven't found a book you like yet. And I think that must have been so gratifying. Just to close this, a reminder, after just a few weeks, just 2 half terms, 60% of these students said they were more interested in books and reading, 52% were reading more, and 82% wanted it to continue, which is really astonishing. And I think you can imagine the potential if book club like this happened every week for these students. So thank you for listening.
Amazing, Alison. Thank you so much. So I'm really pleased to say that we have 2 librarians who participated in the pilot joining us this afternoon. So first up is Debbie Squires, librarian from Isleworth and Scion School, and she's going to be talking about how she implemented the informal book group in her school and give you some more hints and tips about how to make it successful. Over to you, Debbie.
Okay, well, our school is very diverse. It's all boys, all different, you know, it's very diverse in terms of class, ethnicity, in terms of free school meals, EAL, SEND, well, a lot of boys with ADHD. It's an absolute comprehensive school. And we have boys come with a range of reading experiences. Some have been read to as children, some not at all. Some have books at home, some don't have books at home. Some come from primary schools with great libraries, some with no, you know, very poor reading background. Our school is strong. We have a strong reading culture, reading for pleasure culture. But we have a lot of boys who love reading, but we have a really a fair share of boys who are reluctant readers. So we were really keen to engage in this project. We had obviously year 8 boys. We had groups of 6 to 8. I ran 5 groups and I do a job share. The other librarian ran 1 because of how it fell on the days. Our boys are tested termly using the star reader test. So we had some idea about reading ages, but we used the pre-trial questionnaire that we were given, and we know the boys a bit because we have them, we're very lucky because we have them in the library once a week. So during that time, they do silent reading and book talk with an English teacher, but we had some idea of who was a keen reader and who was not so keen. So we sort of offered this opportunity to boys. They didn't have to do it. Most of them wanted to do it because they didn't want to sit silent reading. And we had groups of 6 to 8. We were lucky, so therefore we weren't taking them off timetable. We weren't taking them to different classes. They came, they sat in a different space in the library. It was a shame that we didn't have a really nice, sort of really comfy space, but it was a compromise. But we had a round table and we had lots of books that were specially for them that we got out of a box every day. So that's the sort of context. The sessions varied from group to group, but it always started with a news round. So what something great that you did last week, or something that you remember from last week, maybe. And we also asked if they'd read anything last week. It might have been captions on a video, or it might have been nothing, or it might have been whatever, a book, believe it or not. And after they did this, they really loved doing this. And that was the icebreaker. It sort of bonded everybody. And then we got the books, they got them out of the box, they looked at the covers, and we had a thing where people chose 2 or 3 and they would read blurbs. Sometimes we'd read the first pages. Sometimes we did have some sessions where we had 5 minutes silent reading, and then they'd tell the rest of the group, or they might choose a book that they thought somebody else would like. So we varied it around. We used the author letters. They weren't too impressed with those. I showed some videos of authors, which I thought were brilliant. They weren't too impressed with those either, funnily enough. But I sort of went a bit with the flow, gave them also the option to take any of those books home if they wanted to. And some of them did, and some of them chose the same book every week, and some of them chose different books every week. We had always something to read, biscuits and cake, and that was the biggest attraction, I think, sometimes. In terms of, so that's how the sessions ran. It sort of varied a bit from group to group, but what I would say in terms of challenges, the biggest challenge was disruption from other students, because we didn't have a space totally away from the other group. Other groups might get up if the teacher wasn't managing them, and they'd come over and want to join our group, and that was quite disruptive. Also, I think getting the boys, I tried to really start it off with trying to make it their group, but there's a balance between sort of letting them run the group and getting them to listen to one another. So I had to sort of rein it in a bit and sort of balance it so that they would listen to each other, and on the other hand, they could sort of dictate in a way. It was their group and how it developed. The other challenge was that it did take me away from the other boys in the class, because I think it was a sort of from half term in one, it sort of was, it went over about 3 months. So I sort of found that that year I didn't know the whole class as well as I normally do. But anyway, those were the challenges. The successes were that the boys absolutely loved the group, and they still wanted the groups to carry on, and they're still asking me about groups. Lots of other boys wanted to join. So this year we're going to have groups, but with different boys. So that was a great success. The other thing is that the reading ages actually did improve over that time. And I think that's probably because the boys, when they were doing the reading test, they were more focused. They wanted to do well, and they were more engaged in the whole notion of reading. And it became sort of, reading was sort of cool, which is nice. Quite a few of the boys now I can see this year are reading regularly, have become part of the keen reader group. Others are more or less the same, but they're still quite positive about reading. They love rummaging in the book boxes. And I am actually reading sort of shared reading groups now with some of those boys. Top tips, because I don't want to go on too long, don't want to overrun, but I would say, first of all, be non-judgmental. The rights of the reader says it all. The boys loved that. And so they could say whatever they want, they could give up reading, they didn't have to do anything. I think that's really important. The other thing was the team building, the fact they loved talking about their past week and saying something that they'd done in the last week and sharing that with the group. And it built the team, and it also helped me see the kind of things they might be interested in. So it really helped me be able to recommend books. What else? That was so non-judgmental, run something so they're actually talking about themselves and what they like, what they don't like, etc., what they want to do in the future. I think it's good to have special books just for the group. I think support from management was, for us, if you can get that support, it's really key. And biscuits, cakes, hot chocolate, whatever you can manage, but food, it really sort of goes really well with it, and it was very, very popular. And I would just say one other thing, something I would do differently, is that I think this year, because I am going to run some similar groups, is to include a couple of keen readers, because some of the keen readers wanted to join the group as well. And I think that might really help the dynamics and actually motivate other boys. And that's me. I hope I haven't
That's brilliant, Debbie. No, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And it's amazing that you're going to be doing it this year as well. Thank you very much. So our next speaker is actually one of our brilliant authors who has supported the project. And I first came across her work as a writer when I read Stargazing for Beginners, which I absolutely loved. And then her Land of Raw series, which for me was just like reading a book that I'd written when I was small, except sadly I haven't written it, but just that whole notion of imagination and imaginary world. So I'm really pleased that Jenny McLachlan is joining us today. Thank you so much, Jenny. I'm going to hand over to you.
Hello, what a pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's very exciting. I've got so much to say, so I've got to control myself. Thanks for coming after school. I remember when I was a teacher and all I wanted to do after school was put on my pajamas and have a cup of tea. So hopefully maybe you're doing that as well, who knows. So I've actually now been an author for longer than I was a teacher. So I've been an author 13 years now, and I was a teacher for 12. So I've just tipped. I don't know if I can keep saying, for a long time I said, I'm a teacher. For years I've said I'm a teacher. But I don't think you ever stop being a teacher. And when I was a teacher, I taught in a very big secondary school, 2,000 students, and I was an English teacher, and then I was an advanced skills English teacher, and then I was head of English before I became an author. And so I've actually dedicated 25 years of my adult life to this, trying to persuade as many children as possible that reading is wonderful in two slightly different ways. And I think it's interesting, why have I chosen books? Why? Because I've got lots of hobbies. So why am I so passionate about reading? I've collected a pile of my books, just for the ones I've written here. So this sort of represents quite a lot of effort wanting to get young people to read. And I think it's because there are so many reasons, but what it always comes down to is that as a child, reading made me immensely happy. The level of enjoyment I got from reading was so high that I just always wanted to share that with as many people as possible, or at least give children the possibility to try it and then decide it's not for them. But I thought unless they've experienced that thrill, they won't know if they like it or not. So that's really been everything that's worked behind what I do. And then when I was a teacher, so I used to do everything I could, of course, to promote reading with my more reluctant readers. So I tried it all, got a little list, I had to dig back into the past, do accelerated reader, guided reading, while the rest of the class were doing something else. That never worked. I tried it though, bringing in loads of books from home, letting them read anything they wanted. You know, my Where's Wally books just got torn apart. And then I'm happy to say, and this is one of the reasons I was so keen to take part in this, I set up a book club, and it was the single best thing I did in terms of having an impact. I was always measuring the impact of things and thinking, wow, that took a long time to set up and it didn't do much. And then I ran the book club, and what happened amazed me. Now, it was slightly different to, I didn't have the power of foresight. I didn't have a toolkit to help me out. I was just making it up as I went along. But basically, I worked with a group of Year 9 students, and I picked them because they were significantly below the point they should have been at. And I just thought, well, adults are all having book clubs, so let's just have a book club. And they would come to my classrooms. We didn't have a special place. We didn't always have biscuits. We did sometimes. And yes, I did have to buy them myself. I saw a bit of that in the chat. So I'm pretty sure I went and got those biscuits, but we didn't have them every week. I used to run it 3 times a week. And I didn't want them to come out of English lessons, probably because I was an English teacher and really wanted to protect those English lessons. So they used to come during tutor time, which worked for me because I was the head of department, so I didn't have a tutor group. So it's always difficult. I remember it being an absolute pain to set up and to get these children to come, and thinking, is this going to be worth it? Well, yes, it was worth it. We did have some new books, and I think I'd been sent this box, and I'm fairly certain it may have even come from HarperCollins. I can't remember, and we picked through them, but definitely what amazed me, so at the end, obviously I was tracking their reading levels, and at the end I wasn't actually expecting there to be any difference. I only ran it for 6 weeks, and at the end all but one of the group had, and I'm sorry I'm talking about levels here because this was 13 years ago, we used to expect 2 sub-levels of progress during the year, and all but one of the group had moved up an entire level. So I think they'd come in at a low 4 and they ended either in a level 5 or at a high 4. And I just couldn't believe that it worked. And I can only assume, because I'm thinking about what I did, is that it unlocked some opportunity to see reading as something for them rather than not for them. And definitely the social side of it was so important. We spent as much time chatting and hanging out as we did talking about books. The books were definitely a part of it. And I've tried to, because I really wasn't doing anything special, emphasize this enough, we were just chatting about books, reading a book together and laughing about the book often. And when we'd I remember getting stuck. One thing stuck in my mind really vividly, and we were reading a sentence, and it was about someone falling down a bank, and a boy saying, "Why would you fall down a bank?" And then I realised he, of course, thought a bank was something to do with money. So he couldn't understand how you would fall down a bank. And I thought, I can see why reading's really annoying for you if you're reading sentences like that. And I think the fact that we were able to talk about what it feels like when you don't understand what a word means maybe makes him think, when I was reading, if you don't understand a word, it doesn't mean you're not a good reader. Just that's what reading is, working it out. And I think I've always thought of reading as being a bit like The Secret Garden. So I do love that scene in The Secret Garden when she gets the key and goes in, and inside the secret garden, and it's great if you're in there, but if you're locked out, it's not so good. And I think it's useful to think of an equivalent. So for me, for something I feel locked out of is music. So I've got a husband who's a big music fan. If he goes into a record shop, he is off. He is rifling through the records. He's saying, this is good, this is great. Oh, this is by so-and-so. I haven't got a clue. So I actually feel nervous in those situations that I might make a mistake. I know it sounds stupid. You say, well, you just like what you like. I don't know what anything sounds like. I wouldn't even know what's good. I might pull out some. I wouldn't know where to begin. And I think children going into libraries or book situations can feel the same. They're faced with this sea of books. They don't know the code. They don't know if they might pull out a book that's in their mind intended for girls or boys, or the wrong age, or not cool in some way. It's rather than it being a delightful kid in a sweet shop situation, it's a stressful, I might make an idiot of myself situation. And in that place, it's best just to say, I hate reading, I don't like reading, because there's no chance of you putting yourself in an embarrassing situation, I think. It's like me in the record shop. Now, if somebody opened up that record shop after hours and got me and a group of similarly musically ignorant people in with some biscuits and said, right, we're going to pick out anything you want. We're going to put it on. We're going to play it. You can ask all the questions you like. It doesn't matter if you don't know how to pronounce the names or what hip hop is. We're just going to listen and we're going to talk about what we like and don't like. I think then the next time I went into that music shop, I would have more confidence to go around and work it out. I hope that metaphor works. So I realised mixed metaphors here. I've done the secret garden, I've gone down the record shop. So I think that's why the reading club worked when I did it, and that's why I believe it will work for you. And now I remember it being a massive effort on my part, and thinking when I set it up, is this worth it? And it was so worth it. And one of the reasons was I enjoyed it so much. I didn't anticipate that either. I thought it would be awkward. It was just really, really fun. I really enjoyed it. And so, I do hope that you dive in and you overcome all those barriers that will inevitably be set up. And you know, that the thing that then changed it so I could keep running the reading club, of course, with the senior management team, was when they heard about the levels of progress I made. It didn't really matter, they enjoyed it, but that really helped me. And you know, I think that it's a wonderful thing. You're letting children into the secret garden. They can have a rummage around. They can think, is this for me? But at least they've had the chance to get inside and bask in the enjoyment of reading, and then decide later if that's something they want to do or not. Because that's the other thing, as I always do say to them, you know, it doesn't matter if this isn't for you. It's not the end of the world, but you at least need the chance to have found out if it is or if it isn't. Is that 10 minutes?
That's brilliant, Jenny. Everybody loving the analogy in the chat there, and thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. I love that notion of the secret garden and kind of delving in and just trying to discover. And I think that's these book groups offer the opportunity to do just that in a really unpressurized environment. So really pleased now to hand over to Sam Smith, another librarian who participated in the pilot from St Mary's Catholic School. So over to you, Sam.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're all enjoying this so far. So, as Victoria said, my name is Sam, and I'm the librarian at St Mary's Catholic School in Bishop Stortford. Our demographic is quite an interesting mixture. We have a very large catchment area of 64 primary schools, from ranging as far north as Cambridge and as far south as North London. So we have quite a diverse community in our school. And as a result of that, our reading culture is a bit of a mixture of, we are fantastically infused in reading and we're not infused in reading. And this trial gave us an opportunity to try something completely new and completely different. It did mean kind of tweaking a couple of our library policies. So in our library, we do not allow food. Obviously, that's a no-brainer. Books plus food and water equal bad. So we decided for this trial to relax the rules for that. So students who are participating would be allowed to bring in food. They would be allowed to bring in drink. Obviously, allergies to be adhered to. We don't want anyone having an accidental anaphylactic shock. We chose our students based on a pre-trial questionnaire that I think was mentioned earlier. We went for a mixture of students who all identified as reluctant readers, but all had a different sort of outlook on reading. Some of them were skeptical about reading, others were quite reluctant, others were open to it, but just didn't have the time. We took our students out of English, which was controversial when we decided that. However, we wanted to minimize the disruption to the regular school life of the students involved, as we wanted them still to take part in the rest of their core subjects and normal lessons. It was for 1 hour a week, which after they got registered and came down to library was more nearer 45 minutes. We had just a simple check-in to begin with, asking about how their week was, if they had any highlights, if they wanted to talk about anything they found interesting in their books, and we would have a discussion about whether a student found something interesting or a theme that they quite struggled with or thought was a bit weird for a book, and we'd have a chat about that. We would then do an author letter. So I would choose an author letter for all of the groups, and then we would discuss it. One that resonated with my group my groups was The Rights of the Reader, which was written, it was part of a letter by Anna James, which was fantastic. And one child kind of had this epiphany moment of, oh my gosh, I can actually put down a book I don't like. I don't have to finish it to the end, which really resonated with them. With the trial, we had books that were provided for us by HarperCollins, and I kept those separate from the rest of the library stock on a large trolley for the students who were involved. So it was sort of a tasting menu of the wider library, which the students really valued, as they weren't overwhelmed. One thing that I thought was interesting is a lot of students initially started to choose Barrington Stoke books, so the shorter dyslexia friendly books, They then liked them significantly, and they would move on to larger, longer texts that appealed to them. A couple of our texts that were really popular were Echo Star by Melinda Salisbury, which sort of discovered this bit of dystopian AI in there. And the other one was a horror book. I think it was Freeze by Chris Priestley, that seemed to really attract their attention. After some independent reading time, I'd read an extract from a book, and then we would have a discussion around the themes in that book. One book we read together in this format was called The Disconnect, which is about a school who decide to give up their mobile phones for a week. I think it's a week or a period of time. And then the students, we had a really interesting debate about technology in schools and whether they could actually cope with not having their phone for a week. And a lot of them surprisingly said no. So in terms of the success stories from our trial, we had a significant number of our students who really engaged with it and really enjoyed it. We did have some who didn't, for various reasons. We did have to remove a child from the group as they were too disruptive. We did have one child who refused to read in any of the sessions, but they would take their book home and they would read it, and they would come and talk to me after the session, say, "Sir, I've read this book, it was fantastic." We did have one student as a success story who absolutely hated reading, but now reads regularly and will even read on her way to football training, which is an hour-long drive round trip. Some of the other issues we had was timetabling sessions. My library is a mixed space. We also have maths interventions being taught in there. And with our timetable in our school, we have a split timetable. So sometimes breaks will overlap with lessons. So we did have to shut the library down for certain times to enable the sessions to be taking place uninterrupted. I probably waffled on for a bit long, so I just have a couple of top tips in case anyone does want to try this. So first of all, I would let it be student driven. One of the things I really valued from one of my groups is that they absolutely owned it. They asked lots of questions. They nicknamed themselves the Afternoon Tea Book Club because they asked me once if they could bring in cakes and drinks, and I said yes, and they absolutely loved it. And one of the students had their birthday during the trial, and they asked to bring in a massive birthday cake, all allergy checked, of course, and they absolutely enjoyed it. And they all agreed that having the food and the independence to be like, "Sir, can we do this?" to have the confidence to actually ask the questions really impacted on their enjoyment of the trial. Which leads me on to don't underestimate the power of food. It has been touched on multiple times by lots of different speakers, but genuinely it is a good hook. And parts of the trial in terms of I remember one group, we were talking about different types of biscuits for half an hour straight because that's what they were fixated on. It was really interesting. And then from that, they then was like, "Okay, we like this. Let's go choose some books." And they then engaged more because they felt more comfortable with me and being in the environment of the library. As I kind of touched on earlier, using dyslexia-friendly books as a hook initially, I found was really impactful. A lot of students who came into the trial said, "Oh, they're just too long. These books are too big." And to be fair, some of the young adult and middle grade books do look quite big and quite intimidating. So to give a child a book that's 80 pages or even 50 or 40, and for them to actually accomplish reading something is a huge achievement for them. And that led to them wanting to step out and try bigger books and larger stories. Also, keep staff notified of wins and successes you have with these sorts of projects. I regularly involved the English department in what was going on, told SLT. I ended up doing a big presentation to SLT about how impactful this was. And as a result of this, we are looking to implement this across all of Year 8 this year in sort of a different format with a mixture of groups of keen, reluctant, and resistant readers. Not all 180 odd children in your group at once. I think that would probably overwhelm me. But just a mixture of about 6 per half term from each class that would we're hoping that will have a similar impact to how the social reading spaces trial had here. My words got a bit mixed up there. I think that is all I had on my list that I wanted to say about the trial. If anyone has any kind of concerns about sort of budgets and whether SLT would actually go for it, I would say just ask the question, use the data to back it up. It really helped me push my case study forward, and I had a lot of students come up to me at the end of trial and ask and wanted to advocate for continuing these trials going forward, as they felt it had such an impact on their reading journey.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sam. That segues very nicely into me just sharing that as part of the toolkit, we've created an advocacy presentation. So we've taken the kind of key headline stats from the pilot and put it together in such a way that you can present it. I myself have been in that position where I've been given the opportunity to talk to SLT or maybe do something in a staff meeting and get buy-in from teachers. And we know that that is a crucial element of this, especially if you're looking at taking students off timetable. And again, as Alison said at the start, that's a really important part of the pilot because it enabled them to not feel that they were giving anything up. They were actually doing it as part of the school day. And we all know the value of time for reading in the school day. So that brings all our presentations to a close. But if I could just ask for spotlights for all the panel, there are actually quite a few questions, and it would be really lovely if we could go through some of those now. So yeah, if we could have all the speakers under the spotlight, that would be great. First question right at the beginning, Charlotte was asking, could I ask what students did at the club if they chose not to read? Sam, I think you did just touch on that a little bit, but Debbie, Sam, either of you, what did you have students who chose not to read? And if so, what did they do?
Unmute. Can I answer that?
Yes,
Because
please.
we did have some students that wanted to be part of the group, but when we were reading out blurb and first pages or whatever, they didn't want to read out loud. So that was fine. Other people were quite happy with them not reading, they just listened.
Yeah.
So that was okay.
Yeah, fab. Sam.
We had kind of, I say probably kind of two types of students in that regard. We had ones who would just be resistant to everything and would actually disrupt the whole session to the point where it made it untenable for me to carry on with the session. So they sadly were removed from the session. Other students who were resistant to begin with kind of had the walls up, but eventually they kind of warmed up and took the time to actually read. We had one student who hardly said a word throughout the whole of the 12 weeks he was on the trial, but he read a very chunky book for the whole of that 12 weeks, and he actually finished it and came and found me when he finished it after the trial. Was like, sir, I've actually done it. So I think it's just encouraging them and just giving them the space to be them.
Be them. Absolutely. Jenny, did you have any?
I'm just sort of bringing it back actually. So what I did was, because I read it, and then if they wanted to be a part in the book, I think they would volunteer, and then they would be a character. So I would then they read out the parts of the characters if they wanted to. So it was almost like a play.
Which is lovely.
If I felt like it was slowing down, I'd take over and then we'd get going again. But yeah, I think that maybe added to the fun of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of this as well speaks to the building the relationships with the young people, doesn't it? And obviously as a librarian or a teacher or whatever, that's such an important part of the work you're doing. So giving them space to talk about biscuits or not talk is really important. There's been a couple of questions in the chat about the books and the titles. We do have the list of the books that were gifted to the libraries taking part in the pilot. That was part of the funded element of the programme, and the support from HarperCollins clearly really valuable. And that is something that we're looking at when I mentioned earlier about talking to different funders about potentially scale up. So that would be something we would hope to include if we roll this out. But I think if you're able to ring fence some books and keep them special for the book group, that would obviously be really valuable and kind of add to the specialness of it. And I think the report highlights that notion of specialness and the students sort of feeling, you know, like they're participating in something really important. So other questions are, obviously this was a study for year 8. A couple of people have asked if that this could work for year 9 or potentially even other year groups. I don't know if any of you've got any thoughts on that. I mean, Alison, I know we obviously had a specific rationale around year 8, but what are your thoughts on other age ranges?
I personally think that it could be adapted for lots of different ages, because I mean, we wanted to go with those early secondary years, and the only reason we didn't do year 7 was because of often the focus on reading recovery, because so many are going into secondary school below the level. But really, it's just about making it fun, taking the pressure off, creating a social environment, allowing them to make new friends and feel relaxed and happy and feel they belong and fit in. And you know, so yes, all of adolescents want that, don't they? You don't have to be 12 or 13. Like I said, I remember what it's like growing up. It's not nice, it's not easy, and I think it just makes them feel so much more relaxed and happy at school if they can be part of something like this. So
Yeah,
yes, any age,
absolutely.
I would say.
Absolutely brilliant, thank you. There's been a few questions as well about time, how long or short. So is 20 minutes long enough? Should it be weekly? Should it be fortnightly? Obviously this was a specific sort of 10-12 week project, but what Sam and Debbie, did you do that? Were you able to do that weekly, or did you have to adapt for your setting?
We did it weekly because, as I said, it just fitted the context of the school, because they have a weekly silent reading and book talk lesson, although the book talk is a bit minimal and it's more sort of teacher-led, shall we say. So ours was a very informal group. But there were some weeks where we couldn't do it because something else was happening in school. But for the most part, it was weekly. We used an hour. I'm sure you could do it something in half an hour. An hour was quite a good time because the boys had lots to say and lots, you know, there was always something to talk about. So, but I think you could do it in half an hour, and I think you could adapt it. The important thing is to fit it into the context of your school and what you can do and what works. For the group and for the teacher, or well, I'm not a teacher, I was a teacher, I'm now the librarian, but what works for everybody.
Absolutely. And I think as well, obviously everyone on this call will be from a different setting. I think somebody just said they were from a library in Sweden, which is really exciting. So you know, thinking about that, and actually the point of this toolkit and this resource and what the study is showing is this is a model, but you can obviously take that and put that into your school setting and your demographic and the needs of your students. Just a note on that as well. I know we look at selecting students, and we talk about that in the toolkit. Alison, is there anything you can add to that sort of thinking around how you go about, or how you advised schools to go about choosing students for the pilot?
Here we go. Well, I think that we wanted children who could read, you know, but just chose not to, really. So this wasn't about really trying to bring those students on that were really struggling with it. It was about trying to create that will to read. So it was more about the will than the skill, you know, if you like. So yes, we were, and I think that what we were sort of hoping was that the librarians would consult with the kind of form teachers and the English teachers, and there was a kind of collective decision about who should be invited to join this this book club. But really it was about children who could read, maybe not brilliantly, but you know, but they just really just chose not to engage with it, and we wanted to change that attitude.
Brilliant, thank you. And there's also a question regarding SEND. So somebody's asked, Debbie, in your end of trial focus group and feedback, you noted a high proportion of the boys who'd been selected were suspected or diagnosed SEND, and they really flourished in the small group format, which was an unexpected outcome of the trial. Is there anything more you can add to that, or any other thoughts?
Well, it actually doesn't really surprise me, because a lot of those boys just need just like small groups. and it works, a small group works for them. But also that silent reading for some of them is like a really challenging time. 20 minutes where it's silent reading is just too much. Whereas in the group, they could talk and they could sort of move around a little bit. I mean, I did have some boys, I did have a couple of boys who were a bit like Tigger, you know, like bouncing around. And I think you saw a picture of the boys that were sort of building the Tower of Books and whatever, which was a bit challenging for me. But I think they benefited definitely from a small group, and I think lots of boys can. That's why I said I think I would include maybe a couple of boys or a boy who was keen reader as well. I'd mix it up a little bit more, because I did end up with quite a few boys who found it quite difficult sitting still and listening to other people, but it worked out fine, you know, and people had a sense of belonging to a group. That was what was really nice. And I think for those kind of boys, that's really nice that they're mixed in with a group of boys and they all liked being together and sharing ideas and sharing experiences.
Brilliant, thank
And
you.
There's
some really lovely comments coming through the chat saying thank you for all the wonderful tips. And to be honest, I think we could probably sit here for another hour with lots of other questions. But I think it's now 4:59, so in an effort to finish on time, just a huge thank you to all our speakers this afternoon. We really value your input and the brilliant example that you're showing and ideas that you're sharing. Thank you so much, Jenny and Alison, Sam, Debbie, for being here this afternoon. And we will be sending out the link to the toolkit. And if you do have any questions, obviously feel free to email and we will help and reply. And we can always put you in touch with Sam and Debbie if you've got direct questions. So thanks again, everyone, and see you next time.